Are we good? Is that fine?
Is that good?
Sweet.
All right.
Oh, these lazy assholes. What are they doing? All right, well, welcome, everybody. We don't have slides because these are all personal stories from our many years and Jeff's many years in the industry.
How many years have you been in the industry?
Security proper, 15.
Damn, you're
Yeah, I told you.
a baby.
I'm just a baby. But here's what I wanted to kick off with. We don't have slides, we have stories. And I'm all up for audience participation if you have particular questions. It dawned on me, well, before I get into this, I want to kick it off in the spirit in which this talk was intended, which is community. And I'm so happy. I love Charm because there's so many students here, and we get to influence them. Take the motivation from that as you will. But I would not.
What are we saying? Go find another field while you can.
Yeah, just run. Fucking run.
What are you
But I would not be here without the likes. Quick story. I used my first SOC security gig was spent listening to this man on Security Weekly on my trips to and from Philadelphia, third shift, for 2 hours it took me to get there. So without people like him, there's a particular person in the audience that I want to acknowledge really quick. Whether you know him or not, he is a juggernaut in the hacker community and in the industry. We wouldn't be as solid as we are without people like, you might know him as No Hack Me, but his name is also Mick Baccio. He is the reason and the fault that I am still in this godforsaken industry. But it's a net positive as of this minute. And, oh God, this went off. Shit. Yes, no, maybe? Oh, did you thwart me? Nope, there it is. Hold on. Okay, cool. And one more thing. I'm not even going to call it a shameless promotion because one of my first DEF CONs, I don't know if anybody you know, my name's Rando, by the way. This is the legendary Jeff Mann. Let's get that out of the way. And I run a contest called Who Slides It Anyway? And one of my oldest friends who welcomed me in this, again, about community, who welcomed me into this community and made me feel accepted, and the reason I'm here today, his name is Aaron. We also know him as Bind. Bind is unfortunately about to shuffle off our immortal coil. We need to fly him from Seattle down to LA so he can be with his friends and family. And I'll be goddamned if I'm not going to take my little platform and at least have this up here. So either share it with your friends, give if you want, but I want also to know I am not the first person to do this, and I learned it by watching the likes of Jeff Mann and everybody else. We give back to each other. We have our backs, and the more of us that embrace that philosophy, the better off we're all going to be in the long run. So that's my friend Aaron, and fuck it, I'm going to leave him up there the whole time. But we got stories to tell now, and I don't know, Jeff, how do you want to go about this?
Well, I would be remiss then, since we're talking GoFundMe. A few years ago, my granddaughter was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and we did a GoFundMe for her just to try to pay for all the extra stuff that insurance doesn't pay for, which is a lot. Like she got into Johns Hopkins, great, but somebody's got to pay for the parking to go to Johns Hopkins. And I was at ShmooCon 3 years ago.
Something like that.
And I mentioned to Rando that there was this GoFundMe, and he's like, it's not full yet. He took it, started spreading it around. By the end of the weekend, the GoFundMe was done. So thanks, Rando.
I like taking money from people for good causes.
For good causes.
Yeah.
My granddaughter is cancer-free right now, and that's very cool. All that to say is...
That's fine. Keep going, Jeff.
Where's your mouse jiggler?
Mouse jiggler.
If that goes out, it's fine. I think you guys have all seen it by now. And I also have a badge made out of the QR code, so if you didn't get it, just scan me.
So let's start out this way. I have for several years been noodling with the idea of, geez, sometime I should give a talk on how to survive getting fired in InfoSec. And Rando, you went through an experience just a couple months ago of being laid off, and you were pretty public about it on I guess LinkedIn is our de facto.
Exceedingly public.
These days. And I saw him again at ShmooCon, and I was like, hey, I had this idea for a talk, and you've just been through it, so we're like, let's give a talk on it. We didn't really know where we wanted to go with it. My original idea was, don't be afraid to stick to your guns, speak up when you see something wrong, don't be afraid to ruffle feathers, and don't be afraid to get fired. And then the last couple months happened, and I'm not sure that's good advice anymore. Because, you need to eat and pay for electricity and stuff like that, rent. But in better circumstances, I would say it's okay to stick to your guns, and if you see something and you know it's right and you know you're right, push, push, push. I think I'll try to temper that today with, maybe do it better than I did or something like that. But I figured, I've been in this industry, security proper, is that how you framed it, for 43 years, 44 years? Since before it was a thing. I mean,
I'm turning 44 in October.
Communications security. When I started, it really it didn't have anything to do with computers. If you had secrets, you locked them in a safe. So that's how long I've been in the business. And looking back, I've been released from companies a few times, but I haven't often told those stories. I tell all the fun, cool things I did, but I don't talk about stories about how I didn't do so well, or in my view, I failed an organization.
And another overarching part of this is, like he just mentioned, might not be the greatest advice to just go leave your job right now. But I'm going to personally share lessons that I've learned over the years. So I've been laid off, Rift or otherwise, whoever that business is calling it, about 7 times over those 15 years. Yeah, what's that? Yeah, okay. Yeah, rookie 7, noob. Get good,
hey,
scrub.
Go, switch.
Yeah, switch. You should be up here, not me.
Well, I've been fired quite a few times.
Yeah, I only got fired once.
They call it, well, we dissolved your position, but
your position no longer exists. It was there 5 seconds ago. But one of my important parts about this is trying to, you'll never bulletproof yourself against this. And if there are students in this audience, I am so sorry. It's not as bleak as we make it out to be, but it kind of is. But it's not all about scary, 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 booga, booga, booga. It's going to be how to prepare yourself for this. It's when the axe falls, it's going to be somebody somewhere never met you, never had a problem with you, but you make a little too much money, or you're a little too new, or whatever. So you have to embrace the fact that you are all you have in that position. So how do you plan for that, right? I'm 43 years old. I just got the notion of having 3 months of salary. And even that, I know that's a crazy privileged thing to say too. But I want to share, so part of my stories are going to be how to help guard against that and plan for that. So it's going to hit and it's going to suck, but how to plan for it. So when Jeff's going to tell his stories, I'm going to give you guys the option. I have 2 or 3 stories that I deemed as important, and I'm going to let you guys raise your hands to see which ones you want to hear first, but I'm going to let Jeff take it away on his.
So where should I start?
In the beginning, God created.
Well, if you've heard any of my stories before, I used to work at the National Security Agency and was doing some pretty cool things. Was there at the very beginning of internet security. I was one of the founding members of what came to be known as the first red team at NSA. And this is prior to 9/11, so this is back in the late 1900s. And it always gets a laugh.
By the way, Gen Z thinks that's so goddamn funny. It's not.
I mean, it's hard to tell this contextually, given the state of the world today, but NSA back in those days was a pretty secretive organization, had this mission that protected the communications and all the secrets of the military and the government, and they were very conservative about it, and they were very bureaucratic about it and very measured. And what we were doing is doing ethical hacking and pen testing and breaking into organizations and their networks, telling them what was wrong. While it was a cool idea and everybody liked it, It did sort of run into the politics of what NSA does and who NSA does that to. Hard to believe maybe in this day and age, but NSA, their charter is to only do what NSA does historically to anybody but U.S. citizens. 9/11 changed that. That's another story. So us doing ethical hacking against other government agencies, while it was a cool idea and it was a new idea, and we were one of the first in the government, at least in the intel community, to be doing this kind of stuff, we kind of ruffled some feathers. It came to a point where we were going to be doing a job for the Department of Justice, so it was kind of outside of NSA's purview. NSA was in charge of all the classified networks and systems. At the time, an organization called NIST was responsible for unclassified networks. We were hired by the DOJ to do a penetration test of their internet presence. And again, this is back in the late 1900s. Before we could start the job, because even back then when I was trying to accelerate the process, it was a 3-month process to get all the authorizations. It was especially sensitive because NSA wasn't supposed to do it. It was supposed to be NIST. But back in those days, NIST didn't have the capability, so there was this sort of unwritten, written bureaucratic procedure to go through, which we went through, took months. Before we could start, the DOJ website was compromised. It was the first hack of a DoD system. And if you saw it these days, it was very primitive. It was an HTML site, and somebody figured out how to break into it. They changed the Attorney General's portrait, who was Janet Reno at the time, to Adolf Hitler. And if you scrolled down, it went south from there. I got a call.
Started at Hitler. And it got lower.
I mean, nothing compared to what you can easily browse on these days, but this is back in the days where it took like 10 minutes to load even a simple website because everything was over a phone line. Back in the days when literally every system on the internet was connected by a copper wire, despite what Google AI told me when I asked the question. I got a call on a Monday morning from the customer saying, help, we've been hacked over the weekend. I put together a forensics team. We went down to DC to DOJ headquarters and started trying to do some forensics and trying to help them figure out what went wrong and what happened. Third day into it, I got a call from the home office saying, the shit's hit the fan, you gotta come back. Somebody blew the whistle on us. Somebody accused us of violating the NSA charter because I was the leader. I was the one that was put on double secret probation and investigated. I found out years later they weren't trying to just get me fired. They were trying to build a case to charge me with treason and put me in prison. Kind of reminiscent of Edward Snowden, but I was accused of doing the things that Edward Snowden was accusing NSA of doing. Gosh, it's been 10 years ago at this point. So I didn't technically get fired from NSA, although they were trying to fire me. But that's sort of my first experience at not continuing to be employed and doing the things that I was doing, because given the chance, I got out. This DOJ website hack happened in the mid to late August of 1996. By the end of September 1996, I was no longer at the National Security Agency. I left and went out into the private sector, sort of not letting the door hit behind me as I walked out. They were very happy to see me go, it turned out. I didn't even get the going away party or anything like that. I did get a sweatshirt, NSA logo, so that was cool. So the lesson learned then was we finally got vindicated, and we got brought into a conference room and were being counseled by senior management, and they basically said, you know, we like what you guys are doing, we think it's important, but if you're going to do it, you have to do it following our rules. And I was sort of this young hacker thinking, this is all kind of a new thing. I said, there are no rules when it comes to hacking and breaking into, systems, so no, we're not going to follow your rules. So I left. Not necessarily a negative story, because I am here where I am today, but that's what got me started. That was technically the first time I kind of sort of got it fired, but I didn't end up in prison is the good news.
Was there anything you would have done differently, looking back on it, 87 years in the future?
No, not really. I mean,
Like, there was a young Jeff Mann.
I would have rather it not happened. I was perfectly content to keep going and doing what we were doing. Well, part of me wanted to go out and get a job in the private sector and make more money, make private sector money, not government money. I did get a 30% raise Friday to Monday, quitting the government, going to work in the private sector. But I can't really point to anything that we did wrong. So no, there's nothing I would have changed.
How do you deal with because this is going to lead into another story that I have. How do you deal with the feelings of, I did it right? My principles are intact and I got slammed for this anyway. How do you deal with that on an emotional, intellectual level?
Well, I've only been aware that I had emotions for about the last 15 months.
Yeah, you were pretty touched sharp edges before that.
Yeah, so everybody's always asked me, what do you feel about this? I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Pretend you had emotions.
Pretend I had emotions. I mean, there's been other occasions, and I can tell other stories where I know I was right and I got fired anyway. There is a satisfaction, if that's an emotion, in sticking to your guns and sticking to your ethics and doing what you know is the right thing to do. It doesn't always end well on paper.
Does it make the ramen taste better when you're...
I always say I sleep comfortably at night. My head hits the pillow, and I sleep like a baby. I don't feel guilty. At least I tried.
Right.
I guess I don't know what emotions you ascribe to that. But.
No, that's fine. That kind of bleeds in. I'm going to give you guys a choice. I have 3 separate stories, and maybe we can get to all of them. What? B? B. Do you want the only...
C.
Are you sure? Well, one's the only ever time I got fired that almost led to a lawsuit. One was my first security job, my first RIF layoff ever, being brand new. And the third is finally being on the inside and having to do the layoffs. RIF, the first one I ever went through? Okay. All right, we're going to do that. How many people are new to the industry or haven't even started yet? Are we having any students or anything? Okay, we got enough. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to horrify you. No, it's the most important thing I tell everybody is that companies are great. They pay your salaries and that's fine, but you are your own personal brand and you have to remember that. In the end of the day, even as many well-wishers, you could have an army of Mick Baccios right behind you, but you're at the end of the day when all the sounds are off and your family is sleeping and you're by yourself, it's just you. And people can only do so much for you. So how do you steel yourself against that? Well, the first is to know that it's probably going to come one day or it might come one day. So how do you deal with it? I have done it 7 times. 6 times I did it the wrong way. And I think this last time I did it okay. My first ever security job was I worked for a company, you may or may not have heard of it, called Man and Danny. Small little boutique firm, I don't know, it's, not a huge reputation or anything. But I was brand new to the industry, and I'm going to try to make the story as quick as I can because I have other ones I want to get to. But I wanted this.
So do I.
I wanted this because... Well, my first official one was this little sock gig that I have where I met Mick, but that's a whole other thing. But I knew from that and from meeting him, that's why I introduced him in the beginning of this, because he plays a very important part in my entire career. What was that? No, he didn't do the riff, but he's the one that got it in my brain that this is something that I wanted to do, and I couldn't let it go. So I remember when I worked with him, they used some of Mandian's tools, and I remember looking up to Kevin Mandia, and I still do. The guy's a genius. But I wanted to work for him. I wanted to work for Mandian, and I had no goddamn business working for Mandian. I didn't know anything. My first interview with them, I went through 3 where they declined me every single time. And the first one, and she's a mentor of mine to this day, her name is Jen Ayers. She's a lovely woman, one of my favorite people. She was my first interview. Her first question was tell me about DNS. Fuck. Well, it's always DNS. DNS ruins the internet and ruins my career. I was like, well, DNS is like this thing with names. And she's like, okay, thanks. That interview lasted 7 minutes. I was in this underground parking garage of this company I worked at, and like it's 7 minutes. I looked at my watch. I was settled for noon, and I did 12:07, and I was like, what the fuck just happened to me? But because, and really, one of the only people that I knew was Mick. But Mick has this thing about him, and he has this aura about him that's just infectious one way or the other. It could either be like a vaccine or cancer. It really depends on the day and what kind of day he's having. But on that day, I'm like, I'm going to fight. So I emailed Jen right away. I said, this did not go well. I can imagine her being on the other end of the email and going, no shit. But I was like, but I'm coming back. Like, just so you know, I'm going to apply again, and I'm going to work for you, and I'm going to work for Kevin. I don't give a shit what it takes. I started a OneNote notebook, and I said, this is when you have to be a generalist, right? They want you to know reverse engineering and red team and IR and all of these things. And I'm like, fuck, I don't even know where to start. I was in a resume review village earlier, and then I got a lot of students who just don't know where to start. We have so many different disciplines. And I said, well, first you got to narrow it down. And I had flashbacks and like about how I had to study all these things. I had all these books on malware, which I still don't fucking know about. But I said, I'm going to share this notebook with you. And if you have time, take a look. If I'm going the wrong way with it, like, please let me know. But I'm going to do this. And she was like, yeah, okay, bro. And a few months went by, and she would actually call me periodically. Like, she would call me like once every couple of weeks. She had this is how you be, by the way, this is also another like a lesson for all this. How to be a mentor if you want to be one. Jen is that mentor. She would check in on me when I never asked her to, because I thought I didn't deserve her expertise. I thought that whole imposter syndrome early on is such a bitch. And make no mistake, by the way, kids, and adults too that might still have it, when everybody has it, nobody has it. Okay, so don't let it get to you like that. It's a complete fallacy that your brain's lying to you about. But anyway, so I see that there's a second position comes up, so I apply a second time. And this time I actually get into the building. I was there in, where is it, Alexandria, I think is where their office was. And I get into the building, and Jen is there, and she's happy to see me. She's like, he's here to get beat up again. But I had studied. Now, this was for a network-based, like,
Let me guess, she didn't ask DNS this time.
No, she was merciful enough to skip it, and I had studied the shit out of it, too. I knew all about recursion and all kinds of fancy shit. See, recursion, that's a word in DNS. And I was doing well. I was in this little conference. It couldn't have been bigger than the stage, and Jen was sitting looking very nice. And then I don't remember what her name was, but there was another woman there who was on the endpoint side of things. Whoops. I was all about networking. She started asking about like endpoint artifacts and shim cache and this, and I just deer in the fucking headlights. I knew before I walked out that door I didn't have that job. Matter of fact, I believe when I emailed the recruiter going, hey, how did I do? I think it was like, LOL, what? Fuck. And then I got one of my next gigs. This was the gig where I listened to the lovely Jeff Mann every night on my train ride, and it was for this security operations center in Philadelphia. Third shift, and I'm walking down Broad Street one night, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm either going to get a hot dog or get stabbed. It's 6 to 1 and pick 'em. And I got a phone call, and it's a Pacific Coast number, and it's Jen. She goes, I have a job for you. You have to interview tomorrow. And I was like, I just started this gig. I love this team. I've been here for a couple months now. Like, she goes, do you want to work for Kevin or not? And I was like, well, that's a fair point. So I get on this phone call, and it's me, Jen, and his name's Justin Harvey. I don't know where he is now, but Justin's a very cool dude. And he says, listen, man, I'm really sorry. This was a remote gig, but now you have to move to San Francisco. And I was like, well, that's not going to happen. Like, I'm getting married. I'm not doing this. So I was just crestfallen. I finally got, like, and I knew I was going to be ready for this, but Jen on side channel was like, answer these like you're going to get this job. Do not, and you're going to run across this a lot, right? You're going to run across questions that you think you're just going to hit the wall with. You stick with it, because it is practical application on my end, and I'm a fucking idiot. But But I sat through that job interview like I was going to get it, knowing after I hung up, I was like, all right, what a third strike, I'll try for a fourth. And then like 5 minutes later, Jen's like, all right, never mind, you can work for us, you can be remote. And I finally got the gig. Right, so that's the long form of the story. 8 months later.
This is just about getting fired. You are going to get to that, right?
It's coming right now. Thank you.
Go.
But I had to set that stage. I had to set that stage to say how much I wanted it, right? How much I tried for it and how much I was like rejoicing. And you're going to run into this. 8, 9 months later, they get acquired by FireEye. I get a meeting invite for 10:17 a.m. Already not good. Of that, it was 10:10, and my boss was like, hey, can you hop on a call real quick? Yeah, I heard somebody go, oh. Can you hop on a call real quick? You got it, boss man. I'm like, I love my job. Let's hop on this phone call. And if you get on a phone call, and it's a boss you've never seen before, plus your boss, plus a weird third party, that's going to be HR. And they said, listen, we're very sorry. Well, no, they didn't even say they're very sorry. They're like, some decisions had to be made and blah, blah, you don't have a job anymore. Process that for a second. Think of something that you've wanted so badly in your entire lives, and less than a year later, it gets taken away from you. Holy shit, how do you even prepare for something like that? You kind of can't, right? But I'm going to try to prepare you for it. It's, I did that the wrong way. I ended up, I hit the bottom of a McDonald's bag like the fist of an angry god for like 6 months straight. I think I gained like 100 pounds. But I did not yet have a routine in place, and this is going to become important later in this talk. Routine, right? Planning for the worst. People say like, oh, it's naysaying and it's negative. It's not. It is disaster preparedness. We preach disaster preparedness as part of our craft. You should also be applying it to your own career. And it's still going to suck, right? And I'm going to get to the actual good routine, but I wanted to level set with, yay, all the way up top and all the way down. And don't ever take sudden meeting invites for people because it's a fucking trap.
My turn,
Jeff.
So shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to talk about, when it has been my fault that I got fired. When I was younger in my career, I've always had the tendency, if I see something, I say something. If somebody asks me a question, I'll tell them the answer. I'll have an opinion, and I'll tell them that. I haven't always been good at being tactful in doing that.
Bitch.
I'm learning now, years later, that I might be neurodiverse, and maybe there's a reason why I am abrupt in my responses, and I'm not saying that that's an excuse, because I have been capable enough at hopefully learning to be a little bit gentler and kinder and giving not so good news to clients, telling them that they're insecure in some egregious way type of thing. But when I left NSA, I bopped around a little bit, ended up working for a company, building a consulting practice, doing pen testing, ethical hacking. Back in those days, the recommendations for security were pretty easy. It's like, you're plugged into the internet, you need a firewall. That's pretty much the only tool that there was back then, the only solution. But we were building a team. We had a really good team of pen testers, really smart guys, and I was abrasive. I was rough with them, and I was rough with customers, apparently. I thought that I was giving them the answers that they needed, what they wanted to hear. I didn't get fired. My team fired me. I woke up one morning, beginning early in the year, to a call from the guy that was my boss, our overall supervisor, and he said, we've all left, we're going to start our own company. And kind of left me with a couple other guys like, whoa, that was a gut punch.
It's like people moving away and leaving their cats in the house, and the cat's like, what the shit just happened?
Yeah, it was kind of like that. That impacted me in a way. I kept working at this struggling company for a little while, and I then shifted jobs, and I started doing what I do now still, which is a PCI consulting. I went to work for this other company, and I did that for a couple years. It was at the very beginning of PCI. PCI is 20 years old now, but I still hadn't learned the lessons of being gentle and sort of having good bedside manners with clients. And I was working with a client that was struggling with stuff, and their solution was to hire a bunch of third-party PMPs. Anybody a PMP? It stands for Project Management Professional.
The person in the back is like, I know.
So some of you might have an opinion on PMPs. I had an opinion on PMPs because they were coming in and basically, this is my paraphrase, they were wanting to push paper around and produce a lot of documents and not really address what I was seeing as the problems. And at some point, I sent an email to a colleague saying, God, these new PMPs, they're like the Three Stooges. And I said other things.
Jeff Mann's biography, the abridged version.
And
some other
I
things.
sent it to this guy, and he immediately emailed me back, and he says, you do realize you CC'd the very guys that you were talking about. Autofill is a bitch. So shortly after that, I was let
The
go
reply
from
all
that
button
company.
was written by the devil.
Now, I didn't necessarily learn my lesson because I got fired on a Thursday. The general counsel for the company gave me a call. Jeff, we're going to have to let you go. Why? Well, talk to your supervisor. And nobody ever did, so I had an exit interview. I'm like, why are you firing me? I wanted them to just say, because you pissed off a client. And all he said, well, what do you think it was? And he gave me a damn...
It's like getting pulled over by a cop. You know why I pulled you over?
Yeah. They want you to admit the guilt. The funny part of the story, and probably didn't help me learn the valuable life lesson as soon as I should, was the following Monday, my supervisor called me up and said, hey, the client you were working on refuses to have somebody else do the job. Can you come back and finish the job?
This is your lesson in leverage.
This was a lesson in leverage, and the first thing I said to him was like, wow, this has to be a really tough call for you to be making right now. So,
Like, he even has empathy in this, too. I know this is hard for you. We'll get through it together.
Well, the funny thing was I'd already been talking to this particular client about maybe working for them independently because they really liked, we worked together well and we were doing good stuff, and we'd already been kind of talking about, hey, can we just pull you in full time? At the time, there was a rule that you couldn't be a qualified security assessor, which in lay terms is the auditor in the PCI ecosystem. You had to work for a company. So I finished the work for this company and talking to the manager that was my client, trying to figure stuff out. And he said, "Would you be willing to talk for another, work for another company?" Sure. I got a call from him a couple weeks later. He had a sales guy for some other company sitting across his desk, and he said, "They do PCI. Talk to him." So he handed the phone across the desk to some sales guy. I end up going to work for that company. 2 months into that job, I was on an assignment where I was sort of undercover doing a PCI assessment for one of the actual card brands. And, of course, they didn't want to admit that they weren't eating their own dog food, following the security requirements that the card brands were putting on all the merchants. So I was there undercover to be sort of quietly doing a PCI assessment. But on paper, I was staff augmentation working for the IT group. So, but I'm looking at all the shared drives, finding all sorts of information. I found a manual that was an installation manual for a Linux or Unix operating system that said, when you first install it, put this hash in as the root password. And I'm like, oh, I haven't cracked a password in a while. So I'm trying to download Crack, or I'm trying to download John the Ripper, and I'm getting blocked because apparently antivirus at some point started blocking that stuff because I used to have it. Anyway, a day later, I come back from lunch and I'm not able to log into any of the systems that I've been logging into, and I shortly after that get walked into a conference room. There's all sorts of managers there. My boss was there. He'd flown in from somewhere. and I'm walked out the door. They're treating me as, violating all their security policies and rules, and they thought I was there stealing credit card information, and so they walked me out the door. I met in the parking lot. My boss says it's political, don't worry about it, because what I was finding all sorts of problems, and they're like, how do we get rid of this guy? But after being fired from one job and getting a new job, in my very first assignment, I'm getting walked out the door. I was like, oh, geez, I'm going to go through this thing all over again. Fortunately, it was a political situation. I stayed there. And over time, I've learned to, hopefully, my wife might disagree, she's in the audience, to be kinder and gentler and ease into the bad news. But I still sort of stick to I've had success overall in helping customers deal with their insecurities and find a way to be secure. I'm hopefully learning a way to get it better, but that's what reinforces for me if you see something, say something. But I'm concerned about saying that nowadays because of the current hiring situation.
Yeah, and I hear from what you're saying, this is another lesson that I've learned as well. Everybody likes social engineering, awesome, sexy, or whatever. But the best principle of that stuff is learning how, and you can tell me if you agree with this, it's an overarching thing of how people give and receive information. We are all very smart people, very opinionated, spectrums, run the gamut. So it's easy to get lost in, I have this thing I'm passionate about, I have to let these people know these things, but there's a way to say it. Because how you give it might be received in entirely different ways, so you have to think about that. And because it'll bite you in the ass if you give your information the wrong way and it's taken the wrong way.
Absolutely. It's the hardest question, and I have no right answer for it, and it's not in a job context, but it's if one of the members of my family says, does this dress make me look fat?
What do you think it makes you look like?
I cannot
Don't say that one either.
I cannot answer that question because if you are neurodiverse, you know that there's a lot more in that question than what the question actually is, and what are they really asking me? And there's a literal answer, and then there's the answer that you should give. There's the answer that's the loving answer,
yeah.
And I get all spun up in my head. But I do that also. That's an example, but I do that in a business context as well, where if I see something, I can't unsee it, and so I have to we have to deal with this. It's not a big deal. We've accepted the risk. No, this is a problem. This is a problem, and I've tried to learn techniques, and I've tried to learn ways to get people to see it for themselves. And for me, it's helping them to have that light bulb, eye-opening moment is almost as if they came upon it themselves.
Yeah.
I call it the art of the Jedi mind trick.
Inception. Yeah. Well, this leads into, God, you're great at giving me segues.
It's like we planned this.
It's like we almost planned it. I shit you not. Jeff had his bullet points in before I did. I put them in yesterday. We just came up top of our heads. But we had also qualified this as this wasn't a talk how to get into the industry. It's just a general here's some lessons learned. So here's lessons learned for managers too. Some of the best managers I've ever had have known that it's not just how you give and receive information and speak to power, but how you manage below you, and being empathetic to that. And we've lost a lot of our empathy. Whether it's just from general, listen, there's a lot of shit going on. We all got a lot on our collective minds, but the art of empathy and the art of how do I get my people to perform to the best of their capability so they're feeling fulfilled, but I have to speak differently to people. So that's a lesson all of us can learn, but I'm speaking specifically to managers right now. So that'll take me into, I have a couple different stories, but here's the one that I really want to get into, because this was really the impetus for me getting with Jeff and doing this talk, because we were at ShmooCon talking about it. I was fresh off the layoff line, but this time it was a little different. Any fans of The West Wing in here? Has anybody watched The West Wing? All right. Those of you who haven't should watch the whole thing. It's amazing. I watched it 12 times. There's a scene in The West Wing where one of the president's advisors and the president are sitting in the Oval Office, and his advisor says, "Hey, your favorite movie came on last night," and it's this line from this movie called The Lion in Winter, and it's stuck with me like so few things have ever stuck with me. The scene, for anybody who's never seen it, is these three brothers are in a prison, and they're about to get executed. And one is freaking the fuck out, like, we're dying, and this is it, we're over. And just one friend basically says, like, "Hey, would you calm down for a hot second?" And he was like, "Why would I calm down? We're about to be executed." He goes, "You fool, as if it matters how a man falls down." And his brother says, "When the fall is all that's left, it matters a great deal." And I want you to stew on that for a second and let that hit. When that is the last thing and you can't help it and is beyond your control, how you do it and how you approach it, that's what matters. It matters a great, and then I went to watch the movie, and it's great. You should watch it again, Lion in Winter. So, yeah, woo. Oh, wait, he was just coughing. I'm sorry. I thought I was getting cheered. I have such an ego. So my most recent story from when we cooked this up was I was in leadership at my last company. And again, I mentioned I've been laid off a bunch of times, and I finally got to see it from the inside, which gave me, strangely enough, even though I was caught up in it, a lot more. I used to, there's talks you can find of me just raging at these people. I name names, and like, there's a whole bunch of stories. Ask me later at the bar. But like, just really raging because I had that dog in me. But like, this time, I was in the room where you see the whiteboard, and if you've never been in this position, you can't imagine it, where you see the whiteboard, and you see the job titles, and you see the salaries next to them, and shit is dire, and now you have to make those decisions that are going to affect other people's lives. And holy shit, there was a period of time where we all just sat there for a good minute or 2 minutes where the gravity just fucking hit. And I saw the human moment in it. There's details later, but it's not for this talk. But like, it is some of the heaviest shit. And I knew right away, like, I was going to be one of the first ones. Even though I was in the room, I knew it. And I was kind of happy to do it because that meant one other person. And it sounds very magnanimous or whatever. This is not meant to be that. I knew if I could go and take PTO or whatever, like, one other person might be okay. Here comes the routine part that I was talking about. I'd mentioned I'd been laid off so many other times and done it all the wrong ways. My routine was the thing that saved me. So think about this. Think about, like, plan ahead for this. My routine for the past few years has been I get up, I go to the gym, I take care of myself, I take care of my family, I make sure to have family time when they come home. And these are the things that are important to me, right? You find yours. But start building, here's the important part, start building your routine before you need it. Because when you try, like, it's great when that axe hits and now you gotta, like, get that routine and go and look for jobs or whatever. The cheat is to have it already there for you. Have been doing it for a couple of years, 3 years, 6 months, or whatever. If you have that, you can shake that rust off. And I said, God damn it, I'm going to get up like none of this ever happened. I'm going to go, whether I like it or not. I posted a few things on LinkedIn about this, and I journaled one day, and I don't journal, it's not my thing. But like, that day I did for the purpose of this, and I would sit and just stare into space. And I was like, you're going to walk now. You're going to walk to the gym for a mile, and you're going to go. And my body was just not fucking moving. Eventually, I got it to go. But if I didn't have that routine, that would have never happened. And that day would have been wasted. The day after that would have been wasted. The day after that would have been wasted. Make no mistake, everything stacks. Bad decisions, good decisions, middle-of-the-road decisions. It all stacks up. And you have to decide how that's going to stack. And know that you are going to have horrible days where you're like, this is all of my fault. None of your routine is working. You don't want to get out of bed, but you have to move. And then you also, now I have to worry about my people getting laid off. I know that that's going to happen. And now I have to have dinner. I have to be present with my family. My son's 9.5 years old. He don't know this from anything, but daddy's still got to have his, we're going to toss the football and we're going to play games together. And how do you process that? This is all about self-care, right? I need to stress, how many times? 5 minutes. Holy shit.
It means it's my turn.
That is your turn. Okay. We have so many more stories. But anyway, routine, and empathy across all of that, because it's all very nuanced, but I want to make sure people take care of themselves.
So I want to try to tie this together a little bit to give practical advice. What can you do now to prevent for the coming layoff or a circumstance where you find yourself no longer employed? Several years ago, I went to work. I got my dream job going to work for a vendor, getting paid vendor money rather than consulting money, and worked really hard at this company for several years. They went through executive leadership change, and they sort of systematically were removing people that had been hired by the original administration, let's say. Yeah, irony there. I didn't mean that. But it got to the point where I got laid off, and my position was dissolved. For months afterwards, I was still getting calls and emails from people that worked at the company. They didn't know I wasn't working there anymore, but they knew I was a resource and they had questions, and I was happy to answer them. And looking back on that, I'm realizing, and this is something you guys can do as a practical matter now, wherever you are, is try to do your best at what you do. Try to be knowledgeable, try to be engaging and a nice person, and if somebody has a problem, help them out. Look for people that have problems, help them out, and the give and take, the balance, as you're saying. But if you're seen as somebody that's willing to answer and willing to help out, and somebody that that is a go-to person, that will carry you through. And all the times I've been laid off and had to look for another job, and it sounds like this might be the case for you, very often the next job comes from a relationship, a contact, somebody that knew you already, knew what you were capable of, and had you in mind. And sometimes, don't want to steal your thunder, might make a position for you, might find a spot for you, or at least just be aware of, this is a person that really cares. They have some experience. They have some skill. That's important, but they're also open and reachable and approachable and a good person to work with. That's probably the best that any of us can do, because there's no way to avoid this stuff sometimes. I've done it, sort of shot myself in the foot. I've had times where it just happened. My longest period of unemployment was 20 months. You got on your feet relatively quickly. Good for you. I went through 20 months of looking for that right next job, but I ended up going back to work for people that I had previously worked for, and it's the job where I am now, and I've been at the job where I am now for 7 years, which is the longest stretch I've had at any company in my entire 40-some-odd year career.
So we got like 1 minute left, 2 minutes left. I want to, the last thing that I'll say is Mr. Rogers had it right. Look for the helpers. We exist. I'd be nowhere without Mick. I know that, whether he wants to admit it or not. But I'm also a goon at DEF CON. That's my family, and those are the helpers. Look for the helpers, learn from the helpers, become one of the helpers. We sustain ourselves. Hackers were here before the industry was, and we'll be here long after. So this is how we sustain ourselves. Lean on people.
I would add, well, to lean on me, don't be afraid to be helped either.
Don't be afraid. I still suffered from that too. Don't be afraid to be helped. Reach out. If I hadn't had that one conversation, spoiler alert, I got a job. It's fine. Yay, coal fire. Thank you, coal fire. Thank you, grifter. But let's feed that cycle for each other, because we really are all that we have. And I think that's probably our time. Jeff, you good?
The end.
The end. Oh,
we have time for questions.
5 minutes for questions.
Oh, look at you, budgeting.
You right there. Okay, this is how do we address mental health? This is a great question, because You mind if I?
It's new to me. So.
Okay. Yeah, he just figured out he has feelings. So, by the way, shout out to mental health hackers. They got a village here. Amanda Berlin does a wonderful job. Do not be afraid. If I had one wish for everybody to have a free piece of healthcare, is to see a therapist. I see a therapist. I take a pill. I have anxiety and depression, and that pill helps. But I talk about it publicly because I don't give a shit because it helps more people than it hurts. I ended up. It's a very small pill. Don't clap that loudly. It's pink. Yeah, we all know the colors. But seriously, real talk, and I'm gonna look right at you when I say this. Encourage others to have help. Do not be afraid. There's no room for stigma on this shit anymore. I went back to my therapist. She said an interesting thing. She said, and I told her all of what I just told you, this routine, and I'm going to go, build my routine, stack. And she was like, I still got burnt out during all this. And she was like, have you tried, I shit you not, she goes, have you tried not? And I was like, fucking what? And she was like, have you tried, because she was like, you're here with me right now, and you have a great routine, I applaud you for it, but there are times to just sit still and let the river flow past you. And God damn it, I was like, all right, you earned your money. That was a 15-minute session. I'm done. So that's how I address that. Look for therapists. Look for telehealth. Don't be afraid to talk about it. There shouldn't be. And the more of us that talk about it, the less there is available to have a stigma on it. Any other questions? Oh, do you have any part of that?
No, I'll leave it at that.
All right, very good.
I'm new to this whole emotions thing. Feelings.
Yeah. Sure.
IT stuff. I'm a software developer, but I got sidetracked. Yeah. And one of the primary effects of blaming myself because I didn't stand up for what I wanted is I get depressed, I get down, and it kind of ties back to what you were saying about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So like I don't have it. I don't have what I need. Do you have any recommendations? I wish I were more like Jeff, where I was like just so confident.
It's awesome being a robot. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So here's my thing with that. Also, personal experience. You are putting yourself deeper into a deficit, and the only person doing it is you. Okay. I'm not a therapist. Okay. Let's just qualify that. Like personal experience. The more that you blame yourself, first of all, when you got laid off, it wasn't your fault. It was somebody with a pen and a paper somewhere, didn't know you, never knew about you, decided you were a variable that they could no longer sustain. Right? I almost guarantee you it wasn't personal unless you like slapped somebody in the face before you went. But it's done now. We dwell a lot in the past. And when I do things now, I do it for future Danny. Like, future Danny is really gonna love if those dishes were done later, or future Danny is really gonna love if he worked out all week this week and now I'm gonna feel stronger next week. So think about, I'm sorry, what was your name? Rob. Do this for future Rob, bro. Like, it sucks and it's hard, but just if you remember nothing about what I said today, everything stacks. You dwelling and being in the fucking pit, which is completely understandable, that stacks. But doing the good shit and saying, oh, you know what? That shit happened. I can't do anything to change it. There's nothing I can do. The only thing that you can affect now is your mood today and potentially what's gonna happen later. And say it like a mantra, bro. Like fucking grab onto it like a stuffy at a carnival, right? Like grab its neck and just say, I am gonna hang on to this. I know it's not my fault. Intellectually, I think you know that too. And then slowly, and it's gonna happen in little.
If I may interject.
Yes.
I'm gonna steal something that a friend of mine said earlier today. We were talking about this talk coming up, and he said, you are responsible for telling your story. You need to control your narrative.
Yeah, because right now what got happened to you is still controlling your narrative. Shit's done, bro. And lean on us. Find me on Twitter. I am more than happy to speak to anybody at length about this stuff, because if I can't talk about it, if we can't do these talks, the shit meant nothing, and I suffered for nothing, and I refuse to let that happen.
As a practical matter, how quick can you pick up Cabal?
Did I say 0 time left?
You're right underneath a very bright light.
Yeah.
I don't even
And we're both
see.
very old, even though we both wear glasses. Anyway, again, thank you very, very much for coming to this talk.
Thank you.
Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. If it moves you, I'll have my badge on. We can help our friends out and do this for somebody else one day. Thank you.
The end.